In the early centuries of the Church, the machinery of the Roman state operated with brutal efficiency. The empire maintained its dominance through strict military compliance, deploying its legions to systematically crush the growing Christian population. Saints Nereus and Achilleus were active participants in this system. As imperial Roman soldiers, they were entrenched in the military hierarchy, carrying out violent orders under the constant looming threat of punishment from their superiors. We know the exact details of their service thanks to a 4th century poetic inscription composed by Pope Damasus, which documented their lives as enforcers of the regime. They were the literal instruments of Roman oppression. By refusing to continue their duties, they were entirely subverting the military authority that held the empire together. Pope Damasus recorded a sudden, miraculous conversion. Nereus and Achilleus abandoned their posts, threw down their blood-stained shields, armor, and javelins, and openly confessed their faith in Christ. 2 centuries later, a different historical tradition emerged. The 6th century Acts of the Martyrs framed the two men not as frontline soldiers, but as noble eunuchs and chamberlains operating within the imperial household. In this version of the text, they served Flavia Domitilla, the grand niece of the Emperor Domitian, and successfully guided her away from Roman paganism and into the Christian faith. The cost of defection was steep in both accounts. The legends detail how they were stripped of their rank, exiled to the island of Ponza, and ultimately executed by decapitation in Terracina. Whether they were heavily armed soldiers dropping their weapons, or highly placed chamberlains sacrificing their political influence, the historical resonance is identical. They willingly surrendered their earthly status for a divine truth. This map of ancient Rome shows the precise location where early Christians honored that sacrifice. Located on the Via Ardeatina, well outside the city walls, sits the Catacomb of Domitilla. It is an underground metropolis. Christians carved out 17 kilometers of labyrinthine tunnels into the soft tufa rock to bury their dead out of sight from hostile authorities. Because Nereus and Achilleus were interred here, the site became a major destination for early pilgrims. To accommodate them, Pope Damasus commissioned a semi-underground basilica built directly over the martyrs' actual graves. In this surviving structure, the architects designed massive windows high up on the walls, deliberately flooding the deep subterranean space with natural light. It was a highly functional design that solved the practical problem of illumination, while serving as a physical gateway between the living congregation above and the martyred saints resting in the dark below. The subterranean basilica thrived for centuries until a devastating earthquake forced the city's population to abandon the site. It sat forgotten and decaying in the dark until the year 1874. That year, a pioneering archaeologist named Giovanni de Rossi began systematically excavating the ruined underground church. Digging through the rubble, he found a shattered marble slab. Carved into its surface was the original text of Pope Damasus's poem describing the soldier's conversion. De Rossi then uncovered a perfectly preserved pillar that once supported the altar. It wore the name Achilleus and featured a rare, detailed carving of his execution by decapitation. These fragments of stone provided hard archaeological proof. The texts describing the martyrs were anchored in the physical reality of the Roman earth. Returning to the map of Rome, we can track the movement of their relics. In the 8th century, to protect the remains from medieval raiders, the church moved the martyrs' bodies inward from the vulnerable catacombs to the Tecula's Faciolae Church near the Baths of Caracalla. This photograph shows where they rest today. The relics of Nereus, Achilles, and Saint Domitilla are interred together beneath the high altar. You can see their visual legacy in the vivid 16th century frescoes lining the nave, commissioned to illustrate the brutal sacrifices of early saints. Transporting their remains from a hidden underground cemetery into the protective walls of the city permanently elevated Nereus and Achilles to public pillars of the Roman Church. Their veneration slowly formalized over time. It began as a special votive mass celebrated directly at their gravesite in the catacombs every May 12th. The Tridentine calendar eventually codified this date, creating a joint feast day that linked Nereus and Achilles with St. Pancras and St. Domitilla. When the Catholic Church revised the general Roman calendar in 1969, Domitilla was removed due to a lack of strict historical documentation, and Nereus and Achilleus were granted their own distinct memorial. But the exact dates on a liturgical calendar are secondary to the historical action they took. Two men possessed genuine, lethal authority and made the conscious choice to lay it down. They traded the temporary might of the Roman Empire for execution in a dusty province. Today, the empire is a ruin, and the sacrifice of Nereus and Achilleus remains
eternally etched in the Church's history.